So before we get started, I would love to know a little bit about our audience. And how many teachers do we have in here? One teacher, great. And how many therapists? Good. Other professionals? And parents? And grandparents, perfect, perfect. Okay, nice. All right, well, welcome everybody. The other piece we would like to know a little bit about is the children that you're here regarding. So how many of you are interested in information regarding 2 to 4-year-olds? Good, good. 4 to 8? Yeah, and then 8 and up. Okay, so pretty much everything. Great, great, all right. So Amanda and I wanted to tell you a little bit about ourselves before we get started. And on the right there is my family. It's my husband and my 2 girls. Charlotte is just graduated from nursing at Western Michigan University, and she has moved to Florida. And then Samantha is going to Kalamazoo College, and she is not sure what she's going to be doing yet. And so both of my girls growing up, you'll see a picture later, they were completely different with their eating habits. One in particular did have some feeding difficulties. She got to the less than 5% of her weight and had some heart issues. So I definitely understand the anxiety that we have over eating and the anxiety about trying to have peaceful meals without the distress of you have to eat your food, otherwise you're going to end up in the hospital. So just a little bit about her. Sammy was my awesome eater, ate anything and everything. So yeah, that's a little bit about my family. And then I will let Amanda.
Hi, I'm on the left with my husband and my son. I lovingly joke that I am responsible for 2 boys at home. One's, almost 50, and then one is 11. My son is actually my better eater. My husband is probably my pickier eater, but after living with me for almost 20 years, I've gotten him to eat quite a variety now too. In all seriousness, we are big goofballs, we like to have fun, and I think that has helped kind of branch out here. And I like to tell people I am a better therapist because I'm a mom, and I'm a better mom therapist. So I've been working full-time since my son was born, and I've learned so much from him that I can take to my clients, and I've learned so much from my clients that I can take to him. So feeding has become a passion, and that's kind of where this presentation was born.
And just to follow up, I was so excited to share my family with you. I didn't share anything about me. I have been a therapist for 29 years. I started out in the adult population and quickly turned to the pediatric population. I've been at Building Bridges for 19 years. And I absolutely love feeding and sensory processing disorder. Those are my 2 areas that I'm very interested in.
So today we're going to talk a lot about thinking and challenging you to think about what your meals look like at home and think about where you want your meals to go. The motivation for this presentation, the feeding clients that I have taken on most recently, the first thing that parents tell me is I hate meals. It's the worst time in my house. I dread it. I have anxiety about it. It keeps me up at night. Mealtime is the worst. And that just breaks my heart because I love mealtime. I love food. I love to eat. I love holidays. I love traditions. And it breaks my heart that not only are these families not getting to enjoy the food, they're not getting to enjoy the entire experience. Mealtime in my family, we like to chat, tell jokes, plan things. But a big part of that has been groomed to get there. And so we're going to give you some tricks that we found along the way here, but tricks that we've also found from different feeding conferences on how to make mealtime a little bit easier. So the first thing I want you to think about is where your meal is now. And then I want you to think about the perfect meal. If you had your family, your dream meal, what it would look like. And now I don't want to burst your bubble, but I'm not going to get you to that dream meal. I'm going to get you to somewhere in between. Okay, the first thing we want to think about is having some realistic expectations. And the first part of our think is to take time. So I know working professionals here, I know parents, you guys probably don't have a ton of time. What I want you to do is think about your week and put a little bit of thought into your meal time. So when we take the time to think about what meals look like throughout the week, we're going to be less stressed. Things are going to go smoother, and we're setting ourselves up for success. We make our kids plan to do their homework and get their homework done and get things set. We plan projects for work. Planning for mealtime, I think, should be a #1 priority too. This doesn't mean you have to sit down and think for hours. This doesn't mean that it has to be this immaculate plan where you're making these recipes and gourmet meals. Taking time to think about your week can be going, ooh, I've got soccer and I've got ABA and I've got speech this week. So we're going to go through Subway on Monday. That's thinking and having a plan. So now when it comes time to that meal, you're not going to be stressed and kind of trying to scramble last minute to figure out what you need to get done.
And also emphasizing there, don't look at what the outside world is doing. Don't look at social media and what they're doing. Think about what your family needs to do. Okay, so my girls again. Up at the top is Samantha at her first birthday, and this is Charlotte down here at her first birthday. Can you guys tell me what's different between the two? One seemed a little messier than the other. Yeah. So the reason for this is while taking time, take time to see your individual kids if you have more than one, because they're going to be different. And Charlotte, for many years and still is my neat child who does not like to get messy. And Samantha is my creative child who is all over the place. So when looking for getting a mealtime for them, I have to be thinking about how I'm going to present the meal to both my girls, because they might, they look at it from a different view. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at each one of our kids and their individual needs. We're going to go a little bit more into detail on this a little bit later, but you do want to know, be mindful of if you have loud music playing. My daughter Charlotte would not like that, but my other daughter would be rocking away. So in a mealtime, if I know that one of them wants music, I might do something like Mozart, and that's going to hit both their needs. So just being mindful to that individual need of your kids, as well as your family in general, because mom and dad have different needs as well. All right. So when also taking time, it's important that you look at your seating. We bring this up in OT all the time because it's so important. If all of you could take a minute and lift up your legs where you're seated, come forward in your chair a little bit and lift up your feet. And then try to write. Try to pretend like you're eating. Is that comfortable? What are you using? You're using your core muscles. So if your kiddo does not have a strong core, they're going to be extremely uncomfortable. You really want to have this 90, 90, 90. So even if they're in a high chair, you want to make sure that their feet are touching the bottom of something. Sometimes we build up bricks that they can put their feet on. Other times the high chair will come with something that they can put their feet on and be at a more comfortable position. We also need to look at this because some of our kids don't want to sit. And why don't they want to sit? Is it because you've offered them a chair that's too big for them or a table that's too small? So they might want to stand to eat. They might want to sit on the floor to eat. So be mindful of what you're looking at and investigate that. You really need to take the time here. And sometimes we do need to allow our kids to stand to eat because they can't sit and attend and focus to the food. Not the ideal though, but sometimes you need to allow them to do it.
Our next letter in think is H, and it's creating habits. So I want to point out that habits and cues for eating don't just start at the meal. How many times do we call our kids down and say it's dinner time and maybe they don't want to come to the table? So starting with maybe giving a 5-minute heads up. My son is a video gamer now that he's 11, and that's the coolest thing in the world. If I said, come to the dinner table, we're going to eat now. Mom, just 1 more minute. I have to get to my base. I have to save. So I've learned if I say, Christopher, we have 5 minutes before dinner's on the table. Can you get to a place and save your spot? Or if he's working on homework, you know, we shouldn't expect them to drop everything because we changed something. Give them the heads up, you know, finish your next problem and then come to the dinner table. So giving those cues can help prep. Habits also can be created in our setting for dinner. So have them wash their hands, have them help you set the table. Create habits where they can be involved with the mealtime process. It doesn't have to be big tasks. They can be little tasks. We can slide. I have some pictures here of some habits. And habits in our house, I have Christopher help us create the meal. My son's a little bit older. We've gone over knife safety. So on the left picture, he's cutting potatoes for dinner. On the right side was when he was a little bit younger, and we set up a banana split breakfast bar. So I let him have a banana split before he went to school, but what we did was we cut a banana, we put yogurt on, and then we put a whole bunch of toppings. Now, I don't think that they are highlighted in there, but they were chocolate chips because that's how he ate his banana split. But by putting some strawberries out there and some blackberries out there, all of a sudden the hands grabbed a little bit of the other stuff too. So I'm all about giving him a little bit of a treat if it means I'm going to get some more bang for my buck later. It's okay to let them have treats. They're kids. They like the sweets, right? So it's okay to let them have that and enjoy it. Starting simple though, things that you can do if you've got little ones at home. 2- and 3-year-olds can help you set up dinner. They can help pour chips into a bowl. They can help choose which vegetable you're going to have. Open up the freezer. We have carrots, we have peas. Which one do you want tonight? They will love it. They are in charge. And who doesn't want to be in charge, right? So that is a big one. We have here avoid snacking, avoid grazing during the day. So we're not saying snacks are off the table, but a big problem we have is when parents come to us and say, my child's never hungry. They eat all day long. They eat their goldfish. They eat their veggie straws. And by the time dinner comes, they don't want it. But they also don't want to say, no, you can't have a snack. And so we caution snacking. We think it's completely appropriate to have it, but we think it's also completely appropriate to ask you guys to close your kitchen at certain times. In our house, we do snack-free time after dinner. I learned my son would take a piece of everything we offered for dinner. He took the smallest piece of chicken. He took 1 green bean. He took maybe a potato, and he'd eat that, and he'd say, I'm full. And I'd say, okay. I said, but this is dinner. He goes, that's okay, Mom, I'm full. We'd go, we'd put all of our dishes in the dishwasher, and we'd start to clean up, and then I turn around, and he's grabbing cheese and crackers from the fridge. So what we've done in our house is we close our kitchen between dinner time and TV time. So we eat our dinner, and if he doesn't want to eat, tells me it's full, that's okay. It's okay that you're full. Thank you for telling me. Just so you know, the kitchen is closing. It'll be available again at 7:30 when we watch our show tonight. And so I learned when I started doing that, he's like, oh, wait a minute. I can't just go grab my cheese and crackers. I'm going to be hungry while I'm doing my homework and playing video games. And so by taking this time in between, it gives them a chance to get a little bit hungry. You could do the same thing between breakfast and lunch, right? They have breakfast, they don't eat so much, they ask for a snack later, maybe you have a snack at 10 o'clock, and that's their known time, after whatever their favorite TV show is, or after whatever favorite activity you guys are gonna do. Make it a habit, that's where that snack comes in.
Okay, so the I is individualized, and we talked a little bit about this when I showed you Samantha and Charlotte. We want to make sure that we are not comparing what we're doing to others. I always think about, we always ate our meals at 5 p.m. and I had friends who ate their meals at 8 p.m. What's right? It's not. There isn't one right way to have your meals. Structure is very important. So you want to keep that in mind, that you try to have your meals around the same time each day. But you might, it's going to look different for everybody. You're going to have some homes that are just chaotic, but that's how they live. That's what they like. That's what they enjoy. And you're going to have other homes where you've got the perfect eating scenario where they're sitting and everything looks really great. And of course, just as like, I don't even know what that looks like in my family because I've never seen that. So at least when my girls were young. Now it's just me and my husband, and it's too quiet. So no meal is going to be the same. At least one preferred food on the plate. So when you do make your meals for your kids, make sure you're making at least one food that is preferred by one of the people in your family, so that each one knows there's something they can eat, which sounds like a big thing to think about, but maybe it's that. I'll make it simple. So let's take peanut butter and jelly. Having a quick meal before you have to run out for the night and you do peanut butter and jelly. One person doesn't like peanut butter, so you make it with almond butter. Somebody else doesn't like strawberry jam, so you make it with blueberry jam. But you're still doing the same meal for everybody. It's just a little bit different. You might cut it a different way. You might present it in a different way. And like I said, that example about the music, try to come to a compromise with the family of what works. Some people just, when you think about eating, and we'll get there later in the presentation, but it's so complex, all the sensory that is coming in from when you start cooking with those smells to when you finish eating. So you really have to be thinking about these things. And if you do the thinking and the planning up front, it's going to be easy when you come to the table. Allow your child to have a voice in the planning. So give them choices. If your child's not at an age where they can speak, hold up choices. Let them pick and choose. You want to allow them to have some control over the food, as well as the child who just eats everything. Make sure they're still getting attention too, and allow them to have some control as well. I think that that's really, really important. Let's see if I covered everything on there. Was there anything else on that one, Amanda?
I was gonna say, I think individualized too. We talked before about having you guys think of your perfect meal. Your perfect meal is very different from my perfect meal, and my perfect meal is very different from Stephanie's meal. I think just going back to that reminder, don't look at Facebook, don't look, I think perfect is all around us all the time, and we're not getting to really see reality. No one's gonna post the picture of their child spilling milk and someone throwing peas and spaghetti in the hair, because that's not what we post, right? But that could very much be what meals look like. So I think just realizing that it's okay, and we're giving a lot of information today. Our hope is if we give you guys a ton of information, then we're going to give a couple nuggets to each one of you that you can go home and take. So we are throwing a lot out at you right now. Don't feel like you have to go home and do everything we say. Think of the one thing or the couple nuggets that really speak to you and your family and your individualized family that you can run with.
Okay, so here we go. Anybody have a family like this? Yeah, we found this picture and thought it was awesome. So there's a lot going on here, and a kiddo who's having major feeding difficulties is not going to do well in this family. So there's a lot of noise. And when I say noise, it's not just auditory. There's visual noise going on here. Look at the lighting. Is the lighting subdued? It looks a little bright in that area. What's the mood? This is very celebrating, very exciting. They are really enjoying themselves. But think of a kiddo who is really, he's just overwhelmed by sensory, and the family wants him to come and sit at this table and have a meal. I guarantee he's going to run away. He's going to scream. He's not going to be happy, and they're going to wonder what's wrong with him. So it's really important that you see how not just auditory noise can affect the eating, but every other sensory piece that is involved in that. So we're talking about the sight. Is it overwhelming? Does your kiddo only like beige foods? Then this is a lot of stuff for him. You want to put a little bit less on the table. The smell. There's all kinds of smells going on in this picture. So what might you want to do? Maybe you want to light a candle before dinner. So it's really not these smells that they're smelling, but the smell of the candle, which can overtake that. You want to look at the lighting. Do we have subdued lighting or bright lighting? And for each kiddo, it's going to be different. So that's, again, we're going to talk later even about investigating your kids, but you need to know their sensory preferences. You need to know how they are going to respond to the variety of senses that are coming in during a mealtime. And then there's our perfect family. So we thought this was great. It's a very exaggerated picture. And this, again, we're going to be discussing some topics over and over today. We want to emphasize things to you, specifically these ideal situations. Like, you know, before I had my kids, this is what I thought my family would look like when we sat down to a meal. This is not what my family looked like. I'd have one kid saying, I want green beans, and the other one saying, I don't want green beans. And I'd be saying, okay, we're gonna have steak tonight. And the other one, no, I don't want steak. And then my husband would chime in, we're gonna have grilled chicken. And I'm like, no, it's just not always peaceful, right? So it's gonna look different for everybody. And the biggest thing as parents and as professionals that you need to share with parents is you need to lower your expectations. It's really, really important that we don't go in with this, but that we create our own picture of what's important to us. You know, taking another situation where you might have a kiddo who does only stand while he's eating, for you guys, that might be okay. And that's okay. It's okay. If it's okay with your family, it's okay to have him stand at the table. You want to do what's right for you. Maybe it's you'd just be happy if he sat at the table for 5 minutes. Great goal. Then he goes off and does something and comes back the next day, let's try 6 minutes. That's okay. Just be sure that you guys are the ones who are setting these goals, but don't make them up here. We want to make sure that they're set where you guys can meet them, because half the battle with peaceful meals is that our goals that we set, our expectations, are built on unrealistic measures, right? So like, we're looking at social media, we're looking at what was it like in the 50s? You see the ladies sitting around the table feeding their kids, and everybody's just sitting all nice, prim and proper. Those are the things that we build our expectations on. And it's important that that's not reality. So make sure that your expectations for your family are realistic.
And know that getting into these expectations, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint, okay? So if you were gonna train for a marathon, you wouldn't go out and run 25 miles, probably get hurt, right? You're gonna start slow and you're gonna build on it. So like Stephanie said, you know, maybe your goal is sitting at the table. Maybe your goal is not throwing food. You know, it doesn't even have to be that they're eating at the mealtime yet. Your goal could be small, and it doesn't mean that you can't have more goals. Let's just do small steps to get there. We'll get to that bigger picture, but let's just take it slow, because I think sometimes we rush too head fast into it, and that's where it kind of all falls apart. So our last letter is K, and it is for keep calm. If you are stressed, your child's going to be stressed. And if your child's stressed, your child's probably not going to eat, and is probably going to go into some of those fight and flight patterns, right? A child comes, it's dinner time, mom's stressed, there's food he doesn't like, there's smells he doesn't like. That's where the screaming starts, the throwing, the hiding, the running, maybe, right? So calming your body is the easiest way to kind of start that calm process. My family knows if I stop and close my eyes and take a deep breath, or everybody backs off for a second, you know, that means mom is not there. It does wonders. It calms me down. I teach it to my clients all the time. Let's stop, take a deep breath. Whatever you need to do. It could be lighting a candle. It could be putting some calm music on while you're doing the cooking. Whatever puts you in your happy place is going to help keep you calm, which will help keep your kids calm. And then that'll help ease into that.
In addition to that, I think I was part of a MOPS, which is Mothers of Preschoolers, and one of the key tips that they gave me was that we, us women, dads too, we wear different hats. So we've got our work hat when we go off to work, and then we come in the house and we put on our mom hat, and then we have to put on our dinner hat, and then we might have to put on the teacher hat. And I think when you look at eating, you are putting on a different hat for that activity. So think of it that way. Get rid of that work hat, get rid of the homework hat, and put on the feeding hat. What do we want our meal to look like? We want it to be peaceful. Then we have to have that peaceful hat on, right? You might need to take some really deep breaths. I've had to do that with kids that I work with. They come in and they're just screaming. They've had a rough day. Our kids had a rough day at school. And we need to be there to help calm them. And if we're like all wound up from our day at work, then we're taking the level up here for everyone. So what we need to do is we need to come in, take some time for us, maybe just do deep breathing for 1 minute so that we can get our level of anxiety down, so that we can meet our children and help bring their level of anxiety down. Really, really important that we watch how we are adding to the stress of the meal. All right, so how to let your child take the lead, build success and independence. So you want to watch your words. As we're talking to a friend, we might say, my child's a picky eater, and Johnny's right next to us. So he's going to go and say, I'm a picky eater. Instead, you might want to say, while you're talking to your friend, my child is a food explorer. And then he can go up to his friends and say, I'm a food explorer. And the same thing here, my child doesn't eat that. I have had a patient come and see me and he says, my dad says, I don't eat that. So you want to watch those words. Instead of that one, say, my child's learning about this food. Then there's your child, or as you're talking with your child and communicating with your child, you might say, just take a bite. And to the child, that is so overwhelming. We're going to talk about this a little later, but it's called flooding. And that, oh my gosh, that anxiety's up here now. That is a new food that your child isn't sure about, and you're just take a bite, take a bite, take a bite. Instead, how do you want to explore this food? Do you want to smell it? Do you want to touch it? Do we take a spoon and stir it and see what it's like? That's really important to watch those words. And just a small story here. I was working with an 18-month-old, and the dad came in, and we were working with chocolate pudding. Probably not the best choice for me, but not knowing what this parent was going to say. We were working with the chocolate pudding, and the child started to interact with it and then made a face. And dad goes, ew, caca. And I was like, no. I can just see him changing the kid's diaper and saying, ooh, caca. I'm like, oh, now we've got this relationship to the pudding. So I did stop that right away. So it's really important that we watch our words so that the kids are excited about eating, so they don't feel that pressure. Do not let your likes and dislikes dictate what your child likes or dislikes. So, well, we don't like that, so he's not going to like that. Important that you don't do that. We've had our feeding group at Building Bridges has had many kids come in and say things like that. My family doesn't eat it, so I don't eat it. And that makes it hard on us, but it's also, we will take the foods that they say they don't eat and we end up loving them. So we don't want to stop our kids from exploring new foods just because we don't like those foods. Okay, and then work smarter, not harder. That's, as parents, we always work really hard. But I think doing these things like planning ahead of time is very important, and then letting your child take the lead instead of you. And that'll take some stress off of you. We have to be there to give the child the food, but they're the ones who are going to initiate taking the food themselves.
Just a note, it's not just our words. Think about our actions sometimes with our child's likes and dislikes. Think about our body language, but also think about what we're providing our child. I've had clients in the past that came to me that weren't eating any fruit. And so I started introducing fruits, and every time I introduced fruit, the child ate it. Oh, he ate banana. Oh, he ate peach. And then I talked to mom, and mom goes, oh, I don't like bananas or peaches. I just like strawberries and apples. So the child who's been exposed to fruit has been exposed to apples and strawberries, and strawberries. And so the child never got the chance to be exposed to any other fruits because those were mom's favorite. And so, not that you have to go and have 2 separate grocery bills, but sometimes, encouraging the child, if you're at the grocery store, what do you want to try? And it can be small. You can buy 1 orange, you could buy 1 banana, you could buy, you could just pick 1 piece of produce. So it'll cost you, maybe $1, and then you can take it home and see what happens, right? So sometimes I think we forget because if we don't like something, we don't serve it. But sometimes our kids will have different likes than we do. And if we're limiting what we're exposing our children to, then that's going to limit what they might be open to trying.
There was a handout in the back that does have, it's called Helping Children Create Emotional Control. So that was in the back. If you don't have it, you can grab it on your way out, but that does give you some more information regarding words that you can use and how to discuss this with your child. Right. So a special note about bribing and rewards. This is a touchy topic because if you give a reward to a kid, it's almost, so let's say Johnny doesn't like green beans, never had green beans. And I said, I'll give you $1 if you eat that green bean. And Johnny chokes down the green bean and he gets his $1. Did we do anything for him? Probably not. It's really important that the kids have time to evaluate the food. If you want to say, hey, you had a great week with eating all, your food this week, we're going to take you to go get ice cream. That's fine. That's at the end of the week. You didn't set up a bargain of if you eat X, Y, and Z, you're going to get this. We don't want our kids choking down food because we're bribing them. The other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to cheer them on too much. So that positive reinforcement can also be overwhelming. If he took a bite of the green bean and then I was like, yay, you took a bite of the green bean, that's so exciting, let's go tell Dad. We think that sounds really good, but now we've just raised that bar for him. He not only has to eat that green bean, I guarantee the next time we're going to give him like 2 scoops of green beans. So we're going to say, but you ate it, right? And so we don't want to raise the bar like that. It's fine if you want to say, saw you ate all your food today. That's wonderful. But just being careful of our cheering, our clapping, our rewards, so that we know that we're not actually doing more damage and doing these things that look good. The other piece is allow success to be the encouragement. I've had many students who, I ate an apple. I didn't think I could eat apples. And they're excited. And just that, and then you can say, I'm so happy you liked that apple, good for you. So that's a little bit different than telling them, woohoo, you ate an apple. It puts it more on him. You should be proud, you ate an apple. Okay. Right, so the other piece too is watching your body language. Kids read body language. Oh, Johnny, you ate the green bean. So some negative there, and the child's like, well, I want to please Dad, I better eat that green bean. But we've got to watch our body language and how that might be reinforcing the behavior that we're seeing. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, so responsive feeding. I looked at the time and we've got a lot to cover still, so I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit quicker. I did have another handout in the back on responsive feeding. It's more regards to the babies. However, you can take the principles from that and it applies to all children. So responsive feeding. Children determine their own pace. That is the big thing that you want to remember. You don't want to determine the pace for them. The approach is based on communication and offers a choice not a demand. You want the children to feel in control. The minute you put a demand on them, the high expectations are there for them. They put them on themselves and they become very stressed out. And as soon as they're stressed out, they're not going to want to eat anything. So we want to be careful with that. You're going to start where your child's comfortable and tiptoe toward change. We're not going to go from one green bean to a big spoonful of green beans. Non-responsive feeding can potentially take away the child's trust. And the reason for that is you might be putting something on them and they're not ready. And then they don't trust you anymore. They don't trust the process of eating. And sometimes we have kids who the reason why they don't want to eat something is when they eat it, it doesn't feel good. And if they can't communicate that to us, but we're still trying to get them to eat it, it creates a huge mistrust because now, without us knowing, we've hurt our child because we didn't know that hurt their stomach. These principles do come from Get Permission approach and from Marcia Dunn Klein, who has written an excellent book called Anxious Eaters, Anxious Mealtimes, Practical and Compassionate Strategies for Mealtime Peace. Excellent, excellent book. I highly recommend that. Right. And this is when we're talking about looking at feeding, looking at the behaviors. You might see kids whose cheeks get red. You might see kids who run away from the table. You might see kids who throw foods. They refuse foods, and you're looking at this behavior, and you need to look at this problem as investigating because these kids are communicating through those behaviors. Really, really important. You've got your feeding up here at the top of the iceberg, but there's all these different points below the iceberg. You got to think about their organs. How is their GI tract? How is that doing? You want to think about their muscles, how they're feeling. Again, talking about how they're sitting, if they have a good sitting posture. Maybe they do need to stand instead of sit. Maybe you need to provide some support underneath their feet. All 8 senses. So we've got all of our senses, the auditory, the vision, taste, touch, vestibular, proprioceptive. And the one I want to mention here too is interoception. That's one that we don't talk a lot about, but that's that sense of being hungry. Some kids don't sense that they're hungry. So we need to be aware of how our kids are, how the sensory system is working and how that is affecting our feeding. And going to your OTs is a great first place to figure out how your kids' senses are working. Their learning history, style, capacity, development. You don't want to set goals that are they're unable to do. Though we have the typical development, we have our developmental charts, our child might not be there. And so we want to reach them where they are. The nutritional status and history, and then their environment, which we talked about. Those are all important to look at before we see this feeding up at the top. So be investigators. And then this is the flooding. Flooding's not doing to the child. It's not watching for the child's cues. It's flooding is a top down. So that's starting at that very top saying, okay, here's your meal, let's eat. Versus what is my child like? What does he need? What kind of environment do I need to set up for him? His sitting posture. Do we want music? Do we want low lights? All the things that we've talked about today so that we don't flood our kids before we even get to the process of feeding. The flooding is also just, come on, let's eat, putting it in. If you have a toddler and you're feeding them a spoonful of pudding and you want to present it to them, have it ready, let them come toward it. And then you know they want that food. Ask your toddler, do you want help in eating this? If they say yes, help them eat it. If they don't have the motoric ability to feed themselves, then you can put the pudding on the spoon and say, do you want me to help? And then they can, let you know that. So really, really important to distinguish between flooding and responsive feeding.
Just really watching their cues. They're
Yes.
turning their head, they don't want food. If they're pushing their hand out, they don't want food. And so I think too often, and it's kind of just the norm, we are supposed to feed our kids during mealtime, so we feed our kids. So just making sure that we're watching for their cues, and if they don't want the food, it's okay. They don't have to eat at that meal. And when your child learns that they can trust you and that you're not going to force the food on them, then they're more likely to eat when they're hungry, because they know that when they're done, you're going to respect that stuff back.
Okay, so this is where we were going to stop for questions. So we will be moving along a little bit faster, and I'm not going to go through everything here. This is the steps to eating hierarchy. We did put it back there for you. Really look at this. Really important to see the different steps. There are 32 steps here before you get the child to actually take a bite, chew, swallow, and engage in the feeding process. Take a look at all of those. A lot of them we've mentioned today. It is building on each step. So really you should start at the bottom, tolerating the food, being in the room, and then building up. Some of them overlap a little bit because if the food's in the room, they're going to smell the odor of it. But look at this when you're thinking about your goals for your kids.
And think of your kids walking up the stairs. If you've got a little toddler, you're gonna encourage them not to go from the first step to the third step, right? That's not safe. So think about that when we're doing the steps for feeding, because if we rush it, we're gonna kind of crumbling back down, and we're gonna do more building of a wall than we are gonna be helping. So this next part here is division of responsibility. I have a book up here called Child of Mine. It's written by AAoM. She is a dietitian as well as a psychologist, and she's the one who has created division of responsibility. Division of responsibility, it breaks up the responsibilities of feeding. You as a parent should determine the what, when, and the where of feeding. I'm feeding you dinner. It's going to be tacos tonight, and I'm going to put it on the dining room table. The child then, their responsibility is to determine how much to eat and whether or not we're going to eat. So when we think about what we are serving, Stephanie had talked earlier, we want to make sure that there are foods that they are going to like. If we're doing tacos, maybe we're going to have shredded chicken, we're going to have tortillas. So we know one kiddo likes tortillas, maybe he only eats tortillas and cheese. Maybe the other kiddo only eats chicken, but we're going to have something for everybody on that table. And that way everybody's needs get met. And if they only eat the chicken, that's all they eat. But all these other options are available too, right? Our job is not to say, Johnny, you didn't take chicken, make sure you put chicken on your plate. But our job is there to say, you know, hey, we can explore chicken. We're not going to tell him he has to eat it. But if he can handle it on his plate, maybe we do see if he'll put it on his plate, poke it with a fork. But he will decide, I'm going to put that in my mouth, or I don't think so. A great example of division of responsibility, we do a lot of Tex-Mex food at my house. And there was one day I made cauliflower rice. Did not expect either of my boys to eat it, my big one or my little one. They were gonna, freak out over it, but they didn't have to eat it. We're making burritos, right? So I made my cauliflower rice with some, cumin and chili powder and set that out. And then I set all of my toppings for the burritos and burrito shells. My husband goes and he takes a big scoop of cauliflower rice and put it on. Some important things to know. One, I was not tricking and I was not lying. I put cauliflower rice on the table. And when he said, that's different, what is it? After he took a bite, I said, well, that's cauliflower rice. And he went, oh. So when we're serving these things, we're being honest about it. We want to make sure we're very upfront before they decide whether or not they're going to eat it. And he goes, okay. So my son hears him say, okay, and here's the word cauliflower. And he looks at dad as dad keeps eating his burrito. So my son went and scooped the cauliflower rice, and he started with just a little nibble. And so the two of them ended up eating it. It was fabulous because they all tried to do food. I was a little bit bummed because I really didn't get my lunch the next day, but it was a win-win. And it was doing, Sanders' approach without even trying. I just put it on the table. I made it available. I didn't say, here, scoop this. I didn't say, have it, but someone took it, and they ended up liking it. How to serve a family meal that will entice your child. My taco example, burrito example, we do family style at our house a lot. It's recommended that you try family style so that everybody is responsible for scooping as much or as little onto their plate that they want. Kiddos as young as 2 to 3 can participate in family style and scoop on their plate. And they love it. They are in control. We gave them some control again, right? These little people that want to be in charge and rule the world. And we said, you get to make your plate. They are going to be ecstatic. Lost the train of thought here. The other thing I wanted to point out is there is no right way or wrong way to eat food, okay? We've talked about how we don't judge our kids and how we don't say they don't like that, they're a picky eater. Our kids might be a little bit different, a little bit adventurous in ways that we aren't. I have a nephew who takes green beans and they ketchup. And what does his mom say? Oh, that's so gross, don't do that. And he is not allowed to dip his green beans in ketchup at their house. Yes, doesn't eat green beans. So it might be something that we don't necessarily like. It might not be something that thrills us, but let our children, experience food they want to experience. I might not go and dip my green beans in ketchup, but I might look at my son or my nephew and say, that looks interesting. It looks like you're enjoying those. And it's the vessel to get things in. We like to explore with different dips in feeding therapy. You can try to do, ranch dressing or cheese. And if we get something that the child likes, we can dip veggie straws. Now we can dip carrots. Now we can dip green beans. And so that dip can be a vessel to get your child to try some new foods too. Before we switch slides real quick, we do have some cool things that we use here. Different ways to serve your child too if you're on the go. Little separator containers. For our ones with littles, the toddlers, try putting one grape, one carrot, one piece of chicken, giving it to them this way. It's going to be divided out. It's going to look very cool. None of their food is touching. So if you've got a kiddo that doesn't like food touching, it works out really well. We have, we make fun pool plates. And then this is one of our favorite at the clinic. It's the dinner winner plate. So you put one bite of food in each compartment, and when they get to the bottom, they win a prize. Doing these things, it's exciting for the child. It's fun for the child, and it's different for the child. Children love little cups. So I would do little smoothies in here with a little dollop of whipped cream, and you can get them to try different fruits and veggies in the smoothie. And it's small. It's not overwhelming. They're not sitting with this big amount of food that looks big, overwhelming, scary. Little toothpicks are fun. We have little spoons up here that we like to use. So presentation is key. We want to eat food when it looks good, right? So our kids are no different. Cookie cutters can change the world. I have a little guy in the clinic who won't eat anything, but then you cut it into the shape of a star, sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and take a bite out of it in the middle of the song. He thinks it's hilarious. I can get him to try anything. And if he bites it and he doesn't like it, we just spit it out. It's okay. Here's a cup. Let's sit. So I showed some of my tricks, a slide too early, but up here, as it says, portion size. The other thing we wanted to note with portion size, more and more I get families that go, my child just won't eat. And we look at the portions that they're given, and it is so overwhelming. If you have a little one, a toddler, a tablespoon is a serving for a 1-year-old. 2 tablespoons is a serving for a 2-year-old. I had a 2-year-old in the clinic yesterday. I gave him 2 tablespoons of diced kiwi. It was less than half of a kiwi. That would be considered a serving size of fruit for a 2-year-old toddler. So I think sometimes, we have these big expectations. We need to get our children to eat, but we don't have the visual that goes with it. So, I suggest using measuring cups, not all the time, not for every meal, but maybe one meal with a measuring cup and kind of look at what you're giving your child and see how much and how little they're eating from there. And that'll give you a good idea of where they're at. Once you get to be school aged, it's a half a cup. So it does go up significantly at that point, but still a half a cup. I had a little guy stick raw carrots in there to see how many we can fit. And it's not as many as you would think. And here is just a great visual. We talk a lot about tasting foods in the clinic setting. So trying to get our kids to try something new. A note about new foods. It's okay to have new foods at the dinner table or lunch table or breakfast table, but at the meal time, try to enjoy your meal. If you're going to try to teach a child new foods, we like to do that at snack time because it's less stress, right? I have to eat my meal. I don't have to eat my snack. It's kind of where kids kind of think about it. So it's a little bit less stressful. Ways we like to do it, you know, you have a carrot or you have a piece of apple and you want a child to take a bite. Maybe we're at that point where we're getting it close to our mouth and we're excited about it. I'm gonna lick it like a snake. I'm gonna go so fast that I don't know if you even see my tongue. Watch how fast I go. You lick the apple. And then you see, you lick it as fast as I did. You know, I guarantee you, you're gonna have kids' little tongues darting out. Maybe they're gonna touch the apple. Maybe they're gonna hold it just far enough that they don't quite get it, but they're getting it to their face, right? We like to do mouse nibble. Let's take a mouse nibble. How big is a mouse nibble? Oh, it's itty bitty. Let's see who can take the smallest bite. Let's see if we can do elephant bites. Can we take a big chomp out of it, or a dinosaur? Think about what your kiddos are into. If they're into dinosaurs or dragons or lions or zebras. So this is just a handy chart that shows some of those examples, but you know, the sky's the limit. Make it match your family.
What's really nice about this is just that it allows the child to have control too, so that you can say, your child can say, Mom, I just want to take a kitty bite today. And that gives them that control, which is really nice and important for our kids to feel.
This is a super important slide. This, I think, has been my biggest go-to tips for parents that want some calm at their meal now. If you have a child that is throwing food, they are probably anxious and they are terrified that you are going to make that food go in my mouth. If that food is on the floor, you are not getting it in my mouth. Bam, there it goes. So my biggest go-to for especially some of my littles, take a napkin or a paper towel, put it in the middle of the table, right? Or not middle of the table, but middle in front of them. This is our goodbye napkin. Ooh, you have a green bean. That's big and scary. You need to make it go away. Let's say goodbye to the green bean. We slide it underneath the napkin. You don't need to look at it anymore. We said goodbye to the green bean. It's gone. And kids love it. It works really well for like that 2 to 3 year old age range. You know, if we're playing with something, they kind of are going a little too far. They got it close to their mouth. Uh-oh, I'm scared she's going to make me put this in. Ooh, you look nervous. We can say goodbye to that apple. Let's slide it underneath. Goodbye, apple. So that is one of my go-tos, and it has helped a lot of my family. The other thing, one of the first things I like to do in a feeding assessment, the child spit out the food. A lot of our kids have oral motor skill deficits. They put it in their mouth and they get it out. I want you to think of the very worst food possible that you could ever be forced to eat. Maybe it's liver and onions, or sushi, or you know, something awful, right? You put it in your mouth, you can't get it out. So now what do you gotta do? You gotta chew, and chew, and chew, and chew, and swallow. And think about how awful that experience would be. So now you've got a kid who did that once with one food, right? Well, I'm not putting that other food, I don't know what that is. So some of it could be just there. They don't know what that food is. They don't know what it's going to taste like in their mouth. So they're not going to put it anywhere near their mouth because they don't want that bad experience again. So by telling them, by seeing if they can spit it out, and then if they can't, teaching them how to spit it out. And hey, parents, it's okay if your kid spits at the table. You know, we can be polite about it. We usually have a spit cup, so an empty cup that sits next to them. And you put it in your mouth, you don't like it, it's okay, grab your spit cup. And we encourage them to spit it out. Get that out of your mouth. You don't like it, you don't have to have that bad experience. Let's get rid of it. The last thing on here too is the learning plate. We want to make sure that we have, for our kiddos that aren't okay having new foods on their plate, maybe that's too scary, we have a learning plate. So if you're serving a family style dinner and everybody's having green beans on their plate, oh, Johnny didn't take a green bean. Johnny, why don't you scoop one out, put it on that learning plate? We can talk about it. Have everybody go around the table. Someone might say, that green bean, it's long. The other person might say, oh, it's, you know, bumpy. Maybe it's smooth. You know, you can look at it, you can touch it, but it's a way to have that food come to Johnny that's not touching his food, not in his safe space. And it's a good way to learn about something at the table.
All right, so with 5 minutes left, I am going to skip through some of this. Creative play is super important. We will show a few pictures here. We do have a cookbook. I'm going to send this around. If you guys could put your email on here and check whether you want a copy of the PowerPoint or the cookbook, that would be great. We will email that to you. Here's some fun pictures that the kids have done. We absolutely love this kid. She just had so much fun here. And then I just want to, just for you guys, I just want to say feeding is hard, but know that it's the expectations that you put on yourself that make it really hard. Give yourself a break. Take your time, come to the table with yourself at peace. And it's really important that you nourish yourself. Take time for yourself. Do something for yourself so that you don't come so rushed. And also nourish your relationship with your child. So it's not just the relationship you have while feeding. I'm sorry we had to speed through this. Amanda and we have like so much information on this. We could do days and days of talks. So we probably have just 2 minutes, but if you guys could just ask any questions that you guys have. No, not a single one? Well, if you do, you got absolutely, once we send you the information, you can email us or get in touch with Building Bridges and they'll send us an email if any questions come. Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We definitely do see children for just feeding. We do a full assessment so that we can see where some of those feeding difficulties would come from. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
My son, like, any time that I feel fear, doesn't want down, but so I don't know how he can stabilize in dinner time.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things as OTs that we look at for that because there's different things that could be affecting him as to why he wouldn't be able to sit at the table. You could do things like set a timer and just start slow with the timer and see if he can sit. But I would definitely see about his the sitting, where he's sitting. If his feet are flat on the floor, if the table is where it needs to be so that he can take appropriate bites of food. I would make sure that that is set up, even if you have to put a little child's table next to the table and have him have his own sitting place, but you guys are still together, that's fine as well. Yeah, otherwise, if that continues to be a problem, you might want to have an occupational therapy assessment just to see if there's something else going on there. Anything else? Great. Well, great. Well, thank you guys for attending.